Hey everybody, you know me, I love turning lemons into lemonade. I don't like getting the lemons to begin with, but I like turning them into something good. And so I have this piece that I've been pushing around for a while. I have this nativity tile that I have fired on before, and it's taken me a long time to kind of perfect my firing schedule, and even then I feel like a lot of it's still half luck, but clearly this one did not turn out as I wanted. I got a giant bubble, and I used this amber glass, I think it's medium amber, and it had a nice gold irid on the back, so it was set to be a really amazing platter, and then that happened to poor Joseph. So I put it to the side. I've been pushing around for over a year, and decided now is the time to do something with it. So I've got a full fuse load going in. I decided to get my 12-inch ring mold out, and or a stainless steel ring. I'll show that in a little bit. But I'm going to chop this thing up, and I'm going to put it in there, and I need more glass. So I'm going to fire it such that you don't see this pattern anymore. That's certainly my intention. And I think the best way for me to do that is to try to cut this into strips as much as I can and set those into my piece. I'm not trying to be so methodical about the structure of it, but I'm thinking that putting them on the edge would give me more opportunity to kind of hide this, and you might see some of that irid kind of float to the surface. It could be kind of a cool effect. So I'm going to slice this thing up. I'm just going to use my my cutter's mate that I have and try to break it the best I can. It's cold out in the garage. This glass is cold. I don't think I'm going to get straight lines. It's 6 mil, so it's going to be thick, but I'm going to give it a shot and try to get something that's straight. And then what am I going to mix it with? So I'm going to add a fair amount of clear, but I want some complementary color. So I turned to my handy dandy color wheel from Bullseye. Love this thing. Again, I think this is medium amber, so it's 1137. And I look and say, you know, what is in a color family directly across from it, or, you know, using my arrows, you know, what's a complementary color. I'm going to stay away from the violets because this is still, I think it could be pretty with a violet, but this is still a relatively experimental project, and this is expensive colors, and so I don't want to spend the money on these violets here. Something straight across would be cool, but you know what I have? I have a ton of scrap because I went overboard buying Peacock 1176. And so I'm thinking this Peacock, which is right in the middle of this blue-green family at 1176, and this 1137, which is also almost in the middle here, could be some nice complementary colors to each other. I'll give it a shot. If I don't like it, it was scrap to begin with on both ends. So I'm going to cut this up, then I'm going to cut up a bunch of Peacock scrap. I'm going to take a bunch of clear and mix it in there too. I'll show you what the setup is in the kiln before I fire. All right, so you probably saw me clean this multiple times. I have glass cleaner. It had a thick layer of kind of dust on it. You know, my shop is not the cleanest area, and I'm in the garage. But it also, and I got the initial dust off, but it felt like it had a grit, like something that was really kind of stuck to it. So then I have vinegar and distilled water. It's a half and half mixture that I keep in the studio here. That didn't help. I finally got some isopropyl alcohol out, and that did work. I wanted to make sure this glass was nice and clean. I didn't want anything to kind of float to the surface, contaminants to start to cause devitrification, which is already probably going to be a problem with this piece. I didn't want to exacerbate it. Got this all cut up. I'm pretty pleased with the way it cut, actually. You also probably saw me use my heat gun. It's just so cold out here, and warm glass, you know, generally cuts better. It's not perfect, but I was surprised at the number of clean strips I got out of this. So now I'm going to clean up my Peacock glass, cut a bunch of it, and then I'll go start to build this in the kiln, and I'll show you what that looks like. All right, so I stacked these strips up. Now, I forgot to mention that because the nativity piece was 2 layers, it was Tecta and the amber, so you can see how there's clear next to each strip of amber in there. So I think that's going to give kind of a neat effect as well. You know, I stacked it in here as best as I could, and I had space left over on the ends, so I filled it up with some peacock scrap that I had. The peacock scrap on the ends has rainbow irid. I have no idea if that'll float to the top or not, or if you'll even be able to see it. What's in the middle did not, but I just wanted to use up scrap. So this is the piece overall. Who knows what it's going to look like. I may sprinkle a little bit of clear in here, some broken up clear, just to make sure that I fill all the voids, but I think there's plenty of volume in here to fill this up and give me a nice blank. And I don't know, we'll just see what it turns out to look like when it's done. All right, I just opened the kiln. This is still cooling, but what an interesting effect. So a lot of that irid did kind of float up to the surface. This looks kind of cool. I'm pretty excited about it. I'm going to let it finish cooling. I'm going to take this ring off, and I'm going to carefully lift this up. I use papyrus, so I can probably put this back down on the papyrus for another firing. Generally speaking, I often will grind the edge of this and just clean it up a little bit, and then full fuse it again to allow it to spread out a little bit more, because it's awfully thick. So that's my intention. Once this cools, I'm going to grind the edges, clean it up, put it back in for another full fuse to spread out, and then I'll show you the next step. All right, here it is. So I took it to the grinder and I cleaned up the edges all the way around. And you really got to look at this stuff. I mean, generally that fiber paper doesn't stick, but sometimes you get a little crevice and you get some down in there, and you're going to be able to see that when you fire it. So you've got to, for me, I go around real carefully and make sure I get all of the fiber paper out and grind that down, knock off any points that might be hurtful to me as I work with this thing. But check it out. I'm so happy with it. I just think it looks so awesome. So I love the irid that's floated to the top, particularly on the rainbow irid here on the sides. That just looks really cool. This is pretty rough over here, but it's going to spread out and smooth out when I fire it again. Now, I could make a choice to fire it on the back side. So on the back of this, because this was the backside down, these lines are much more refined. They're not perfect, but they're certainly more refined. Around the rainbow irid, you don't get quite as much, and you get a more refined line there. So I think that could actually be a really cool look as well if I were to fire it face down. But I don't know, something about the irregularity on the top here is just speaking to me, so I think I'm going to go ahead and still fire it face up. Now, I'm going to take it up to 1520. I'm going to go super slow because it's so thick. So I'm going to go about 125 or so up to about 1100, let it sit for almost an hour maybe, and get really good and warm all the way through. Then I'll crank it up to 1520. I'll probably let it sit for about an hour at that temperature. So using my digital calipers here, which I always get questions about these. They're on my Amazon store if you want to go check it out. They weren't expensive, but look at that, 13.8. 13.9. So this is a thick piece. So I do want to go slow and conservative on my ramp up. And it's about 12 inches. It's like just shy of 12 inches. Now, honestly, I don't want it much bigger than 13 inches because that's as big as my mold is. So hopefully it doesn't spread out too thin. I'm not going to get this all the way down to 6 millimeters, but I do want it to spread out a little bit, just kind of clean out the edge and give it a nice finished look. So I'll put it in and we'll see what it looks like when it comes back out. Well, it spread. It even went off my paper a little bit, and which is fine. I've got a kiln wash shelf, but it spread. So it went to basically 14 inches. And so that is a little bit bigger than my mold. My mold is 13, which means it would hang off a ½ inch on each side. Yes, I can do math. And I'm just not sure if I'm comfortable with that. So I'm going to get this out. I'm going to clean it up, and then I'm going to have to think about it a little bit and decide what to do as my next step. Okay, I'm about to do what may be the dumbest thing I've ever done. So stay tuned to see if this works out. You know me, I like to learn, and I like to take you along on the learning journey, and this could be a really public embarrassing mistake, but we're going to give it a try anyway. So my initial intent was to use the flouncy mold from Creative Paradise, but it is only 13 inches across. You've seen me do this in another video. I love this as a shape, as a wall hanging. I think it's super cool, but it's only 13 inches and my piece of glass is 14, and I'm just worried that there's gonna be too much that hangs over the edge. So I have this mold. It is a drape mold. It's ceramic and kind of looks like a slumping mold, but it is specifically a drape mold. I got this in a buyout from another artist. It says CS 128. So, and it's scored 128. So I have no idea who the manufacturer is. I guess I should have done a little bit of research before I started filming a video, but you know me. So, this happens to be exactly the size that I think I would need. So what I would do is drape over this into presumably a bowl, a very shallow bowl shape. Could be pretty cool. Let me show you what I'm about to do. Yep, it is what it looks like. I am going to attempt to drape this down over this mold and attach the foot at the same time. So you'll recall in the flouncy mold, this piece would drape down, or excuse me, slump down onto and stick to that foot. And all I've done is I've marked a spot where it is centered, and I've simply placed that foot upside down, and I'm gonna hope that in my schedule, sorry about the video there, I'm gonna hope that it affixes itself well enough. Now I think that the foot is going to mush a little bit and maybe spread out a little bit, but I don't think it's, I'm hoping it leaves a little bit of a gap for wrapping wire around it. This is a kiln washed mold. It may pick up a little bit of texture then on the what's the inside of the hanging, and I guess I'm just gonna have to be okay with that. And I'm gonna go super slow. I'll think about it and then I'll post my schedule. And if it doesn't work, if it cracks, if it breaks, whatever, well, we learned something. But if it does work, then we learned something there too. So cross your fingers and don't skip ahead. Let's see what happens. All right, the kiln is finally cool after sitting all overnight. Let's see what we get. Hey, it worked. I went really slow on the schedule. I'll put the schedule down below in the video notes. Okay, it looks like, I mean, yes, that did squish down like I thought it would. I don't know if you can see this all right. Let's do that. But I think there's plenty of a lip to get wire around that. So it looks good. I am really pleased, and I was worried that there would be more of the mold texture on the inside, but it's really not that bad. It's pretty shiny. I think part of that is because I went really slow. On the back, I did take it over to my flat lap and tried to, this was a little curved, and so it sat a little wobbly. It still sits a little wobbly. I took it over to the flat lap and tried to flatten that a little bit. I may do a little bit more work on it, but it didn't bother me that it was wobbly if it's going to hang on the wall. But if somebody wants to take it off the wall and put it, you know, on a table as a bowl with a little bit of a foot, then you'd want it to be a little bit more stable. But overall, it looks like that fired quite well. So I brought my light table thinking you'd want to be able to see the colors a little bit better. And of course I'm going to work on getting this hung and take some better pictures, but there you go. Now you can see kind of across the spectrum of this thing how the peacock glass on the sides came out. It's really interesting to me how yellow this is and how much clear there is in here. And I think that the amber was just probably a little bit bigger and fell over a certain way. And so that's why you don't get the actual clear strips and the clean peacock color. But instead it's almost more of a green, kind of a cross, because the amber was falling over and coloring the peacock, and you get kind of a green look to it, and even a little bit of a reaction in some spots. You can see the reaction over here too, where that dark line in between where the peacock touched the amber. But what's interesting then to me is you almost get like this split, and this side is this way and this side is this way. It's really interesting how these things go. So I am now going to wrap some wire around this, and I'm going to try to hang it on one of the walls in our house and see if I can get photos. Photographing glass on the wall can be tough, so I'll see what I can do. Last time I did one of these, I talked about twisting wire, and so I thought I'd just show you this setup. I have some wire. I have folded it and then clamped it into my drill. I'm going to use just, and I folded it in half so that it's one giant loop. I'm going to use the other end and hold needle nose pliers. Sorry, I'm by myself and I can't show you this, but I'm going to hold it with needle nose pliers, hold it taut, and then screw. All right, that was probably hard to see, but then by holding it on this one end down here and twisting it, now I have a long piece of twisted wire that is extremely sturdy. So this is what I'm going to use to wrap around the foot of that piece for hanging. All right, and here's the finished piece up on the wall. I'm really pleased. I mean, the colors are cool. It does hang nice. You know, these things are always tough to photograph. I think it's great to see that nativity piece being put to use, all the peacock glass. Here's what it looks like on the back. I probably could have done a little bit better job with that wire. Really pretty colors, and it was all scrap. Feels great. If you don't already follow me on Facebook, please go ahead and do so. It's a fun activity to see all the comments and the conversation that happens over there. So join us there. Thanks, everybody. Bye-bye.